I want to welcome you to another episode of Beyond the Surface Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Wanda J. Evans-Brewer, and I'm seated at my desk this afternoon to discuss something not commonly spoken about, financial abuse. If you're wondering what financial abuse is, let me describe it for you. Financial abuse is a form of mistreatment. It's a treatment whereby someone forcibly controls another person's money or assets. For example, they may steal cash. They may not allow the person to take part in financial decisions. They may even actively prevent a person from having a job. A lot of these issues tend to occur most often in domestic relationships. Some actually happen between husband and wife. Many of these financial abuse, as of late, happens pretty regularly with elderly parents and sometimes even with adult children. The interesting thing is that people don't always recognize the problem because an abuser purposely might select an isolated or vulnerable person who is less likely to realize what's happening to them or carry a lot of shame in admitting that someone is managing their finances, their assets in that manner. So I wanted to look at financial abuse, and really what started me thinking that I wanted to hold this podcast is, as of late, I've had two separate female mentees talk to me about circumstances with men that they've placed themselves in, and both, although they're two different spectrums, have the potential or have led to financial abuse. So let me start with the first scenario without, giving any names or anything like that. I have a mentee who is in her mid-20s. She's graduating from college. She's already graduated from college, is in the process of looking for a job, but hasn't found anything. Like most of us, when we first get our bachelor's degree, it takes us a little bit of time to figure out if there's actually an industry that, is going to absorb this degree. And as you know, we're in a double dip recession. I almost want to call it a triple dip recession, where even the best of the best graduating with, honors are struggling actually to find an industry that they can go and begin to apply their skill set with. So she's graduated, was in a 2-year relationship. As far as she's concerned, it's been a committed relationship. It has its bumps and lumps, and I think anytime you haven't married, and this is my opinion, it's my, I'm saying what I believe based off of my relationship, my faith-based relationship, my relationship with Christ, and also my experience as a woman, that it is vital that women fight to be set apart and selected and be in a committed relationship so that they have some sense of direction and some foundation to build from that reflects what this relationship is about. What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to build a life together, or are we just, experimenting? Nonetheless, she's done those things, and essentially the gentleman has a lot of other things in place for himself. He has a job. He has, he's further up in the degree chain, so he has a higher degree. He actually has greater direction, foundation, clarity on his purpose, his role as it applies to the workforce. So he, said, "Hey, look, move to this city with me. We'll have a life here, and let's see where we can take this." Well, my advice to her is, look, no woman, and I get this advice from my own mother, no woman should ever move any place with no money, no savings, no job, no support system. These are all no-nos. You just don't do it. When I became a teenager and I first started dating, and my mother was never a person that gave me a lot of money to carry with me. She, we just was a poor family growing up in Detroit. I was raised on aid for dependent children. And then my mother was a domestic. She worked and, supplemented the government's money with her money as a domestic. So nonetheless, when I became a teenager, my mom gave me, what she called mad money. And the whole mindset behind mad money was, should you get mad, you can come home. You can get you a cab, you can catch you a bus, but you can come home. You're not placed in a vulnerable situation where someone can hurt you because they have money. In my adult life, I've come to understand that he who holds the purse strings holds the power. So, you can feel like you're making a lot of decisions, but at the end of the day, it's the person that is willing to use their finances, that backs things with their finances. There are lots of people that bribe their way out of situations only because they have money. So, as much as we don't like to admit it, money does play a huge role in our integrity, and particularly our emotional integrity. So I have this young woman wanting to consider building a life, which is essentially shacking with someone, and go away from her support system, the particular city he's invited her to. She has no family there. There's not even this huge ethnic pool of people like her, so there would also be some issues with just sort of acculturation, fitting in, finding your own niche, no job, looking for a job can be a day, looking for a job can be years. No savings, my mother's concept about the savings is your best friend. And it's your best friend, it's your go-to when you get in a crisis because you always know that it can fix things for you. You don't have to negotiate with yourself about your own savings. And then no money. These are things that if you a person living, there are basic everyday needs that you have. And women tend to have a few extras because we have a few extra issues. A lot of it deals with menses. A lot of it deals with makeup and, just those things that have to do with general wellness. So I said, don't do it. All right, that's one scenario. The other scenario is a young woman who fought to come off Section 8, was living out in the suburbs, was actually managed to get her a rent-to-own home. She has a teenage son and a younger son. Got the teenage son a little piece of used car, was thriving. She does therapeutic work, loves her job, loves her work as a workhorse. And had been seeing a man for for a year. He broke it off, and she solicited his attention, kept texting, calling, trying to see how they could resolve things. And he, for all case in point, had said, look, I don't want the relationship. But nonetheless, that's who her heart was set on. And out of nowhere, after a couple of years, he popped back up. And he wanted to restart this relationship. And she was head over heels, felt like this was a sign from God. He was the man that she wanted. She loved everything about him, the way he looked, the way he walked, their intimacy. And so she gave up everything. She gave up the house. She moved. In fact, she didn't give up the job, but what she did was she spent 2 hours each day driving to and from work because he stayed on the further side. He was in the city, and she was in the suburbs. But that's pretty much how long it was. So that scenario lasted for her for 7 months. And one of the things that she shared with me, even as of recently, is that she went into that situation by breaking the lease. She ended up being garnished, so that hit her financially. And then she went into it with income tax money. She had, $3,000 or $4,000. She had enough where she decided this year she wasn't going to do any big asset purchasing, but rather she was going to save this money and use it as a cushion. So it dawned on her once this relationship ended, because he just woke up one day and said, look, I don't want it anymore. I don't want it. You and your kids got to go. He didn't care about the kids. He didn't care about anything. You have to get out of my house. And this became a scramble amongst her friends and family to help her move, because here you have somebody that's given up everything, strained their finances, is getting garnished, driving 2 hours every day, because she was confident that this was the love of her life, even though they weren't married, even though there was no sort of lease or contractual agreement between them. She took this gamble. And and by the fact that I said he dissolved the relationship, for all case and purposes, she lost. So here we have two scenarios. And with the second one of the major things I'm always speaking to women about is you don't give up your assets. Like to come to even get assets is a job, it's work. Like unless you are blessed with a family that will leave you some sort of inheritance, most of us work very, very hard to ascertain the things we have, your car, your home. If you're smart, you have some sort of insurance. You have a life insurance policy that covers your children and should something happen to your any elder, if that's someone that you're taking care of. But then you also, you have good medical insurance, because the reality is health is the greatest gift we have. If we can't keep our health up, then we can't do all the other things. We can't take care of family. We can't work. We can't pay bills. So, these are things that we have to keep in place. And when you're a victim of financial abuse, these are all the areas that come under attack. And part of the reason that it comes under attack is that you're dealing with the emotional integrity, as it applies to finances, of the other adult. And we don't always know the emotional integrity of people. And it might sound odd that I'm using that phrase, but here's the thing. Most women look to be safe in a relationship. They want to know that the relationship is going somewhere, and that what they have is solid, and that it's worth working for. Okay? So capacity and willingness of the other partner are two things we have to look for. What's their capacity to provide, to extend love and support? And also, what's their willingness to be flexible, learn, and grow and change? Okay, so with emotional integrity, things look pretty good when they're fun, when we're creating together, because, we realize in coupleships that we're stronger and we feel greater protection as women when we unite and we become two as opposed to one. And the biggest thing we're looking for is that we want to be protected from the fear of being alone. Like, I don't want to, live by myself alone. I don't want to have to go home alone. I don't want to have to fight through the hardship and trials and trauma of life alone. So we look for that. And part of looking for that requires that we look for we look for men that have some level of emotional integrity. Now, what that means is that in a good scenario, he has a lot of good emotional depth. He has far more layers and richness and maturity in that emotional maturity than most, okay? Now, what we have to be careful with, the perceptions that we have of his emotional maturity and who he really is. So, in both cases, with the first gentleman, I really don't have a lot to say about who he is. I can say this. He should not want a woman to give up her support system, to come and live with him unmarried, to go out into a community with nothing to do, no place to go, if he loves her. Because the reality is, when you're first graduating from school, there is a lot of confusion you have to sort through. Re-identifying who you are. Like, okay, now I'm no longer a college student. I have to put on real clothes. I have to establish real hours. That takes a bit of work. To take a woman someplace and sort of place her there and have her just lost and lonely, that speaks a lot to me about his character. Where, because it's Chicago, and, I think the drive is maybe an hour and a half, he really could just kind of have a long-distance relationship with her, give her time to figure out who she is. He do some things, she do some things, they come together, as opposed to her giving up so much and having to do the bulk of the adjusting. Now, with the second scenario, as I described, she did the adjustment. She put all the burden was on her. She left her house. She made a move that cost her her finances. She shared her income tax down to the penny. And she pretty much could clock that. Once the income tax was gone, that's around the time that he was ready for her to go, that he no longer wanted the relationship. That is the one of the telltale signs of financial abuse, that you get people who force you, that run through your money. They absolutely Whether they physically run through it or whether they force you to run through it, they run through your money. So, let's talk about what it looks like. One, you know you're with a financial abuser when you're having a career choice forced on you. You absolutely know. So you know that you want to travel, or you know that you want to be an airline stewardess, or you know that you want to be a teacher. You get someone that force you to take a job that you don't even want because they want that stream of revenue to keep coming in. Okay? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What makes it bad is when these decisions are not made based off of equality, but rather they're made based off of power and control. Okay? Emotional abusers sabotage your career. They sabotage your career. They sabotage your work life. So an emotional abuser, they don't care if they get you to work late. They don't care if they cost you, clown you or stress you or rip and run you till you don't have the capacity to think. You're not feeling good the next day. In fact, a lot of times with financial abusers, they even go as far as to request that you quit jobs. They want you to quit a job. Sometimes they'll come up with some scenario, I don't like the job, I don't like what it's doing, you're not home with me, whatever it is, even though they know that that's going to bring a huge financial stress into the relationship. Financial abusers track money. They don't track their money, they track your money. And that's the biggest telltale sign. They don't want you buying things for yourself, but they often find things that you can buy for them. So they might say, oh, let's get some rims for the car. Oh, let's get the car repainted. But then if you say, you know what, I think I need a new uniform for the job, we don't have money for that. We don't have no money for that. Financial abusers don't give you enough money, or it's not enough space in the budget for you to have a bank account. That's always scary because for a woman put in that scenario, what the position you're putting yourself in is being hand to mouth. So you can only eat if somebody hands you a meal. You never can sort of already protect yourself and have padding in that way. They often leave threats of leaving you if they have the bulk of the finances, if they have the money and they've convinced you not to work or to continue to have children or whatever it is that puts you sort of in the catbird seat where you're in the lesser position. Then what they do is they're constantly threatening to leave you, in which case you're always running the fear of being destitute. Many financial abusers put most of their things in a woman's name. And they never pay the bills. So they have their phones in your name. They have a car in your name. They have furniture in your name. And essentially they position you to ruin credit. And we know credit actually is money. You can almost, if you ruin your credit, you can almost get nothing. But they never pay the bill. This is, and then the other end to that is, because they don't pay the bill, that forces the woman to actually have to work harder. You got to have to come up with more ways to come up with money to stay afloat. I see a lot of forced families with financial abusers. This means that oftentimes you see women that have back-to-back children, or they're having children at such a rate or in a way where their whole life's work is directed towards caring for children and caring for their partners. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a stay-home mom. It's probably one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have. Anytime you're raising children, you're raising communities. And so if you're raising healthy children and you're committed to that process, this is not an attack on you. This is only to make it clear that, excuse me, that there are people, there are men who specifically direct their energies to disenabling you from being in the workforce. Finally, I see financial abusers who work very, very hard to disrupt any sort of financial freedom and independence, and all of that's wrapped with children, not allowing bank accounts, threats of leaving, piling on bills in one particular name, These are all things that bring stressors, financial stressors, but it is a reflection of a power and control imbalance in the relationship. So, what do you do about it? Well, one thing we need to do is, I always tell women it's important to invest in your dreams. You have to decide who you are, commit to being your authentic self in that relationship, and investing in you. That means having a savings account. It may also mean having an emergency credit, some sort of secure card established that you just keep at a friend's or a family member's house in a locked box. And this means that you have access to emergency resources. My mom would say, never let the right hand know what the left hand is doing. I'm married. I do pretty much run my marriage pretty transparent, and I am open with the books, but we do have separate financial accounts. So for me, it's because I am a money manager. I stay on top of the basic needs that run the house. I'm responsible for the care of my mother, and then I'm also responsible for the care of my children, in particular my youngest daughter, who is just 4. So given that great responsibility in the house, I don't really give space for impulse shopping, folks who are not as responsible with paying bills. I don't gamble with that. I'm living in a city. I've been in Chicago since '85, but I actually don't have any family here. So for me, I've made it my life's effort to manage my own purse. It's not a reflection of disrespect or lack of trust. It is how I was groomed to be a woman. And I can honestly tell you, I'm on my 3rd marriage, and I've had my fair share of healthy relationships, but also just trauma and trials in relationships. And I really believe one of the major reasons I'm still afloat and can talk about it is I've run my own purse. I've never been in a position where a man could just dog me. Just can't, no food, no water, no car, no access to anything that would help me grow and be, progressive. And I have to praise the Lord for that. And I praise the Lord for that because at the end of the day, a woman really doesn't know what's happening in the mind, belief, and emotions of a man. We pray that we do. The ultimate goal is when you're married, you become one. The man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. The wife is encouraged to respect the husband. The husband is encouraged to love the wife. If you're a Christian and you follow that doctrine, the goal is to keep the marital bed pure. So that means that you're not bringing in those additional soul ties. You're not bringing outside forces and energy and spirits into the midst of your relationship. So given that, if that's what you're doing, then you have a greater sense with the Lord in the middle of the emotional integrity of your husband, of the financial responsibilities, and being able to decide, okay, here's my role, here's his role, this is how we're managing it, coming to a place of agreement. You can walk in agreement. And so that's helped me a lot, but I still leave space for error. But because I have a responsibility to see about my mom, to see about my children, to see about my home, this is my roof, this is my shelter, I do not hand over that in helplessness. We can sit down and open the books and talk and make decisions. And I do respect all of his thoughts. I don't always agree, and I don't always follow. But none of this stuff is done sort of in deception or secrecy, any of that. It's the books are open. And the other thing is I make a practice of keeping the books simple. There's not a lot of jazzy things going on. So there's no secret accounts, no secret trips to Puerto Vallarta. There's no intense Latin lover. There's nothing going on. There's just basic bills, basic responsibilities, a few dresses here and there, some lipstick. It's nothing major. But nonetheless, The best thing about love and the goal with love, the greatest love is where there's no fear. That's the greatest love, where there's no fear. And part of why I'm talking about financial abuse is any kind of abuse breeds fear. It's grounded in fear. It's oftentimes shaped in fear. It's fueled by fear. And that's also one of the major signs that you're in something unhealthy. We have to know who we are. Are we the spenders versus the savers? Because if we are, we're in some trouble. Our financial behavior is always a reflection of our character. And our spending habits signal broader traits about our person, about how we see the world, about who we care about how selfish we are or how selfless we are. For the most part, there's pretty much two camps, spenders and savers. There's a little bit of impulsive, all the different characteristics fall up in there. But most times if you get with someone that's a spender, they spend a lot constantly. And most times if you get with a saver, they're pretty consistent about saving. The goal is to be able to do a little bit of both. Spend some, save some, and pay yourself. Pay yourself means that you do a little treat, a little something extra for yourself. And that's compliments of my mom's philosophy as well. I will say this. Spenders, particularly with men, a man that spends a lot often spends to attract mates, to attract a woman. And I'll say this. Women who use money, spend money in coupleships, oftentimes do it as a reflection of generosity. She's spending because she loves you. She's spending to make things better. She's spending because she's trying to support you. She's really actually not just trying to be wasteful. That can be misread. It can set a woman up, particularly a woman that's not in a committed relationship, up to be used. So here's the deal. You have to set a bar. And it has to be a verifiable standard. This has to be something where no matter what's going on, you can tell if a person is trying to grow to get healthier financially. So, like any abuse, the change bar is always centered around counseling. This person willing to get some good old down home counseling, and there's a good book. I love the book. I mentioned it in the previous podcast called Managing God's Money, which deals with the spirit as well as the emotional, mental, physical death of money. So you have to look at it from all those different angles of money. Obviously, you have to see, is this person changing the people they're around? You're not going to get pretty far if you're with people that require that you're always spending. So, if we always have to go to what we get together around is going to the boat, you pretty much with a spender. If what we get together around is, club and the party, strip clubs, just a lot of stuff that's wasteful. Every time, somebody has a white party, you have to get a new outfit, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Places, you have to be selective about where you're spending money at. There are a lot of places I don't frequent because honestly, they're too expensive. I'm not going to spend, $50, $60 on a meal. I'm not going to spend $100 in a night buying drinks and then things. There are assets and there are things that the media makes us believe we have to have. So, for example, I love my iPhone. I've had for the last, 4 or 5 years, I've had an iPhone, and I can honestly say I'm one of those people that use many of the features of my iPhone. I fax from my phone. I use it as a clock. I send notes. I send documents. I use my Dropbox. I really do use the phone as full to its fullest capacity. Nonetheless, I think we're up to iPhone 5, or they might be talking about a 6. I'm not even sure, because I'm on the iPhone 4S because it was free through Verizon, and then I'm just paying for my data plan. So I'm one of those type chicks. I don't mind. I want to stay current. I want to be with it, but not to the extent that it's going to cost me a bunch of money. I don't have the type of finances to buy a $500 or $600 phone to plop that down. And I don't feel like every time a new product hits the market, I need to be the first one buying it. As many of them that hit the market and sell, as many of them that glitchy, they don't last, they don't stay around long enough. And then look, here's the bottom line: half of this stuff I don't need. I actually don't even need anything new. I like what I have. Like, I don't mind saying, yeah, that's gorgeous, yeah, that's doing more stuff, but I'm actually okay with what I have. So that helps a lot. Change bar. The things that you're looking at when you set a bar for change is the counseling, the people, the places, the things. And these are all verifiable things. So I'm not telling you to end the relationship if you're with someone that begs all the time, that is putting more financial strain on you. You seem to be carrying the larger burden. They don't actually pay for very much of anything. No, I'm not telling you that. I'm not. I want to tell you that. I want to tell you that there's not a lot that probably can be done with a deadbeat, but I will also tell you that what I might be calling a deadbeat may be a diamond in the rough. It may be someone that just needs to know better so they can do better. So if that's where you want to invest your time, teaching them, as adults, how to have a healthier relationship with money and a healthy relationship with finances, and do that. If you want to fight off the abuse of a financial burden, I mean, there are many people who stay in abusive relationships and they do enough self-work and counseling that they come out of it. Okay, then do that. But what I'm telling you is that such a thing exists and that it is negative. It's negative, it's painful, and you oftentimes find yourself involved in it because you've done things out of order. Marriage does not guarantee happiness or success. These are two people working to become selfless, and it's a give and take, and then it's also a commitment to growing and disciplining yourself with the Lord in the middle. You're saying, out of all the people in the world, I've selected you, and you're so special. I'm willing to put aside my ego. I'm willing to put aside my selfish ways in order to live whatever time we have here on earth together, to walk this green mile together. So, but you don't get the same kind of benefit when you're living together, when you're shacking, when you are the other woman, and you do make yourself vulnerable, exchanging money on those grounds. I remember one point I was dating a gentleman that I had a young person that had given me a link card, which is a food stamp card. And I gave it to him. He said he didn't have food. He needed some food. And I gave him this link card. And then I realized, I said, wait a minute now. This guy is an adult. And he is so vulnerable at this point, he needs assistance with food. What are we getting ready to do together? It really was the straw that broke the camel's back. Up until this point, he really hadn't asked me for much of anything, but it was just a deeper reflection of a greater problem. Like, if you have to start helping a man, and a man is a protector and a leader first, to get basic food, and he's not saying, I want to be married with you, I want to live with you, I'm committed to you, this is where I'm taking this relationship, this is not going to work. It can't work. At least it couldn't work based off of my standard, my bar. So I asked him, I said, hey, what is this? He said, I really like you as a friend. Okay, as a friend, you can go to the shelter. You can go to the pantry and get some food. You don't need me to give you anything. I didn't want to tap out all of that good love reserves for a friend. That, to me, is the type of effort and sacrifice you put in for a husband. And I'm from the camp of separating boyfriends from husbands. The same thing that you do for a boyfriend is not the same thing you should do for a husband. There has to be a separation. You have to say something for this person that you say knocks your socks off. This is the most important, most interesting, most loving person you've ever met in the world. You can't give it all away. One way to protect yourself from that: be careful about having children out of wedlock. That's always a way to keep you in a financially imbalanced, a financial abusive relationship. Children will do it every time. Animals, for us animal lovers out there, yeah, they're on some level, they're not the same as children. But, you do have a great commitment to and companionship with animals. And that's another way to keep you hooked in. And don't put big, large assets in your name. Don't put a house in your name. Don't co-sign on a car. Don't co-sign on things that, if you go to court and you're married, because of the marriage, the courts can say, okay, the husband takes this, the wife takes that. When you're just kind of friends, that's murky ground. And the reality is, if it has any sort of loan attached to it, you both still owe that loan. They can still come after you. So these are some of the ways that you protect yourself. I've made a practice, in general, I'm a generous person. If I want to, I give things. So if I give you hats, clothes, a trip, if we want to do that, that's fine, and I don't expect anything back in exchange. But in terms of my major assets, I've always put my assets in my name. So Illinois is a 50-50 state. Anything that I've purchased since I've gotten married, I understand that the courts would decide, should my husband and I ever divorce, which I'm hoping we don't, but should we divorce, the courts would decide what is mine and what is his. But everything prior to that unit, actually, he has no dibs on. So I've made a practice of putting things in my name, because the reality is, people wake up and they change their mind. People wake up and they stop being responsible. People wake up and they leave you stuck with the bill. They run through your finances. They run through your assets. They often damage your assets. And then what can you do? It's a lot to think about, a lot to pray about, but it's worth it. This is an important topic. Again, the topic was financial abuse, and this has been Beyond the Surface Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Wanda J. Evans-Brewer, and until we chat again, like always, be safe in God's grace.